Hey everyone, this is Doug C. Brown with the CEO Sales Strategies Podcast. I've got a great guest. His name is Mr. Gabriel Flores. Gabriel has a podcast called the Shades of Entrepreneurship Podcast. We are going to talk about gaining your first million on this call and some really profound points that you're going to find here and some really cool formulas that we reveal on this particular call. So take copious notes here. One of those things we're going to talk about also is follow-up. And for those of you who are interested, we have our SaaS. It's called Vibitno, Vibitno. You can find it at vibitno.com if you want to learn more about that. We're taking on a select few to actually do our first run with this. So if you want to be one of those people who's interested in never dropping the ball again, gaining more relationships, never losing sales, gaining more sales, expanding your relationships, and you feel that follow-up is a challenge for you, reach out to me at doug@ceosalesstrategies.com. That's my email, and just type in, want to be part of the follow-up, and I'll get back to you and we'll talk. And we'll go from there. If you're interested in predictably, reliably, and measurably growing your revenues this year, and that's something that you're committed to doing, also let me know that as well. We are running out our whole accelerator process for this starting in 2025. Let's go talk to Gabriel right now. Again, take notes. You're going to find a lot of value in this episode. Hey, Gabriel, welcome to the CEO Sales Strategies Podcast. Thanks so much for being here today.
Doug, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
So why don't you tell the audience, who you are, what you do. Let's set the frame for this.
Let's set the groundwork. Okay, folks, I first and foremost, I apologize for the lengthy intro here. Gabriel Flores, I'm actually the host of the Shades of Entrepreneurship Podcast. Most recently, actually interviewed Doug here as well, so go check out that interview on the shadesv.com. In addition to that, I'm a full-time worker in healthcare. I've been in healthcare for a little over 2 decades now. I primarily focus on business development and outreach, really helping our cancer, cardiovascular, and general surgery program here in Oregon. In addition to that, I'm actually the president and co-founder of Latino Founders. It's a nonprofit 501c3 that we created here in the Portland, Oregon area. Our goal is to help scale 100 Latino businesses in the state of Oregon to $1 million reoccurring revenue in 5 years. Now, why is that important? Why $1 million? Well, there's actually kind of a strategy behind that. So the reason we're aiming for $1 million is because that $1 million threshold is really where an entrepreneur can begin to pay their employees a competitive wage, but then also be able to begin to pay themselves a market wage. And so that's really where we're trying to get to kind of the baseline, and then we can kind of start helping them build that generational wealth. In addition to that, I'm on a couple boards that I'm sure we'll probably discuss, and then also the owner of Swag for My Brand. It's really just a company you work with. Work with other different companies like Nike, the North Face, and allows you to elevate your brand. So if you're interested, by all means, check it out. Swagformybrand.com. You can upload your logo and you can, check it out, get some renderings and see what your logo would look on an Ember coffee mug or a Nike polo shirt or whatever it is that you have. But that's pretty much who I am in a nutshell. So I hope it wasn't too much of a drawn out statement.
So should we do this in Spanish, you and I?
Yeah. We should do it.
Sí, let's. So you said something really that caught my attention, which is, you want to build businesses up to $1 million, because at $1 million, this is where we could start to pay competitive wages. We could start to do things with the business. I know we were going to originally talk a little more about marketing, but I want to go down this path.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people listening here, they're trying to get to their $1 million mark. And so what do you think, Gabriel, and folks, just so you know, this is totally unscripted. Like, we just went way off what we were going to talk about. But what do you think? Because I know, it is around that $1 million mark where you start to have the cash flow and you're like, okay, I can pay this, or I can invest here now. I can do this. And, oh, look, I even get a paycheck out of it. It makes even kind of sense, right? I guess the question would be, if you're advising somebody like, hey, I want to go from here and I want to get to my first $1 million as quick as possible, where's the focus supposed to be in the business at that point?
That's a great question. You know, it kind of depends on where the entrepreneur is within their business, right? Because sometimes, you know, you might work with an entrepreneur that has a patent, but they don't have necessarily a minimal viable product yet. So how do I take this patent and actually get an MVP and get it in front of people, right? Some people might have that MVP and been working through it, but actually have a cash flow issue. You know, how do I actually raise capital without giving up capital venture funds, right? Because I have a cash flow issue. I'm scaling, but I can't continue to I can't invest into a new warehouse, or I can't invest into new equipment to continue to meet the demands of the scale, right? So it kind of all depends on where that entrepreneur lives and is in their entrepreneurial journey. Now, with that said, I'll be the first one to tell you guys, I don't know everything about everything. There's things I know, and there's things I know I don't know, but there's a lot of things that I know I do not know. My wife tells me that all the time. Trust me. So now with that said, well, really what my goal is being the conduit, right? How can I be a conduit to these entrepreneurs, leveraging my network, leveraging my expertise in the business development world? I might know part of the business development world or the marketing piece, but maybe when it comes to funding, or maybe it comes to other pieces, maybe it comes to operations, that's when we start to actually connect them with mentors, individuals that are actually in that vertical, in that space, in that market, that really kind of understand the ins and outs of the pains of the entrepreneurship, whether it be the food and beverage, whether it be the hardware industry or the outdoor sports goods, just really kind of identifying someone that's kind of in that vertical and connecting them with them so they can kind of have that like-minded conversation. Because, entrepreneurship is interesting. It's like misery loves company, right? Because no, you have to be kind of crazy to become an entrepreneur. Truly, you really have to be a little nuts because of the amount of work you're going to put in and the amount of hours you do. But with that said, there's a lot of individuals out there, if you just kind of reach out and ask some questions, that are willing to actually lend a lot of support and knowledge to up and coming entrepreneurs who have a drive that want to get out there. It's just trying to connect them with the right people. So one, identifying where they're at on their entrepreneurial journey, and then trying to find who's the best person to fit it. If it's, business development, maybe I can happily tap in. If it's more of the funding, okay, we got some over here. If it's tech, if it's operations, we want to ensure that we line them up with somebody that, again, has much more expertise than I might have in that field, or knowledge or experience or whatever the case may be, some type of value. But that's really where it is for us, is just to kind of identify, one, where you're at, and then where can we possibly find the best person for you to help solve that one issue that's really digging you right now to continue to move forward.
Yeah, and so I'm going to throw my hat in on this thing a bit because, I always talk to people about what I call MPS, right? Marketing, prospecting, sales. So it's MPSF because you need follow up on top of this whole process. And with the funding, because sometimes companies it's hard to get funding sometimes, like they just, you go to a bank, sometimes you don't have revenue. They're just like,
Yep.
sorry, kid, we're not doing this. And then, investors are looking sometimes for proof of concept, it's different things. Sometimes funding can take, I have found, a long time to actually get funding. So I prefer to say, hey, you either have to internally fund it through selling, or externally fund it through some type of source, like, that you possibly have relationships with that you can walk people into. So for me, it's like, okay, the 80% of the focus needs to go on to MPSF, right? It just needs to be focused, marketing, prospecting, selling, following up, marketing, prospecting, selling, following up. And that's the continuous cycle. Do you disagree with this, or do you agree with this? Would you change the percentages based on your, experience?
At the end of the day, you have to constantly be storytelling, right? That's the marketing piece. If you're not out there talking about your brand, product, or service, then nobody's going to know about it. I'm sorry. Word of mouth can only get you so far, right? But if you're trying to scale to the point where you're getting to that $1 million recurring revenue on an annual basis, you really do have to have some marketing in play. Now, the sales piece is always extremely important. The old saying, all ABC, right? Always be closing. Well, I think now the market has changed where it should always be storytelling, right? And again, going back to that marketing piece, because I think what consumers want right now, They just don't want a company that, yeah, certainly, these things are great. They're valuable. They have great material and so on and so forth. But I think consumers also want to feel that company, right? They want to feel the brand. Nike with their slogan, all humans are athletes or something similar to that. And so they essentially want to have you feel like, hey, when you put on this swoosh, right? You feel like, I remember back in the day, back in the 80s and 90s, I dribbled the ball down the middle with my tongue out like I was Michael Jordan. I thought I can dunk the ball because of the swoosh, right? And the swoosh made me feel that way. And so the brands these days, it's really about making them feel something or some way. Another good example is AT&T. I'm not sure if you folks have seen that commercial with AT&T on the airlines, right? And it's again, the commercial has nothing to do about phones. Yeah, AT&T's, they're on the airlines and the person sitting in front of them like, oh, can we get a water? And they're like, oh yeah, it's gonna be $3.75. And the gentleman's in front drinking his free water. They're like, oh, can we get food? It's like, yeah, it's another $20. He's there eating his, in the premium seats, he's at $20. And AT&T is essentially saying, hey, we're not like airlines. We don't have hidden fees. The story resonates with everybody. It had nothing to do with phones, but the story made sense because everybody to this day knows exactly the pain of seeing those hidden fees on either an airline or Ticketmaster or Airbnb, whatever the case may be. You see it on it and you just grimace, right? You're like, oh my goodness. And AT&T is essentially saying, that's not us. And that's a great way to draw people in because people don't want the hassle, right? So you can kind of hit them with that, the ease, the value kind of storytelling, or then again with Nike, that emotional connection, right? The sense of feeling. Patagonia, another one, right? Very environmentally focused. If you look at a lot of their tags, there are a lot of environmental focused tags, and so I agree with the marketing piece and the selling. I would say start to change that to the selling to storytelling because your storytelling is going to sell it, right? Because you're storytelling about the value, you're storytelling about your service, right? And so you're essentially selling it. And then the follow-up piece, I completely agree. If you're not following up consistently, it's kind of funny. I actually have a block after this meeting to do a bunch of calls for swag from my brand, to do a bunch of follow-ups on prospects. Because again, if you're not constantly out there following up and you're not telling people about what you're doing, your products or service, nobody's going to know about it, right? So I completely agree.
So we're speaking with Mr. Gabriel Flores. Gabriel has the Shades of Entrepreneurship Podcast. And you're not Michael Jordan. I thought you were Michael Jordan.
Oh man, I could touch the rim, folks. I could touch it, but I could not dunk it.
So I agree with this storytelling. It's interesting now, especially, and I think the pandemic had this push on this process because there's so many brands that have jumped into entrepreneurship, post podcast, not post podcast, but post pandemic. Folks, that's how you know this is live because we make mistakes. And so now it's all about the story. And I teach this even in, to people in selling. It's like, you got to have the understanding of the common stuff that we always had in sales, but now people really want to be kind of story told into the process, right? And so the thing I want that people to hear is the storytelling has to be relevant. I have seen people, Gabriel, go in and tell stories. I'm like, what are you talking about? Right? It's like comes out of left field and the story has to be meaningful to the person you're talking to. That's the thing, right? So what's their problems, their opportunities, their goals? What are they looking to do? You can create a story, folks, around that, and then use the story to position you as the resolution to that, just like you said with AT&T. I know the commercial you're talking about, and I think they did a brilliant job. AT&T used to do a really brilliant job when I was growing up on television. They would, when long distance was, pay for play thing, they would have Mother's Day commercials where, mom would be on the thing and say, oh, I hope my son or my daughter will call me. They're such good children, blah, 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 the pains of the mother and guilting the child. And then it's like, reach out and touch someone, right? It's like, call your grandmother, call your mother, right? So we can pull from, and this is the question I have, Gabriel. We don't have to like be geniuses about this ourselves. We can look at what's working and pull from that and kind of and borrow from that and recreate it on our own, correct?
Absolutely. It's kind of funny. I was, when you're mentioning the AT&T, I keep on thinking about the old 1-800 collect calls, the old commercial when the son's in the labor and delivery room. Hi, Bob, it's a baby, it's a boy. And like really quick and they
Hang up,
It
click.
reminds me of that, but it's true. Use when you're storytelling, and this is something that so Pitch Latino, it's part of the Latino program. Go check it out, latinofounder.com. Essentially, it's a pitch competition for these entrepreneurs. And so this is how we help scale these non entrepreneurs is we actually provide unrestricted grant to these entrepreneurs that actually do a pitch competition. We also have an accelerator program as well, but the pitch competition is very unique because it's truly about storytelling and trying to resonate why your problem, right? Because essentially entrepreneurship is identifying a problem and creating a solution for that problem, and then basically amplifying the value of your solution to that problem, right? So,
wait a minute. Say that again. That was brilliant.
So essentially, entrepreneurship is identifying a problem and then creating a solution to that problem, and then you amplify your solution to that problem, right? So that's essentially entrepreneurship in a nutshell, right? So now that we kind of simplified it, probably way probably simply than it is. Trust me, entrepreneurship is much more difficult than those 3 words. Nonetheless, now that we kind of simplified it in that sense, right? Now you can begin to start to think about, okay, in my personal life, how has this problem affected me? And then how can I then tell that personal story and then amplify that story? Because that story is going to resonate. The reason it's going to resonate is because the fact that you probably experienced that in your own personal life, the likelihood somebody else probably has also experienced it in some way, shape, or form, fashion. So a good example, the winner of this year's Pitch Latino competition here in Portland, she did a crema. She was from El Salvador. And one of the things I told her, I was like, hey, I want you, when you're telling us your pitch, I want you to talk about how you came into you're here in Oregon and you're walking down the aisles and you see the foods and you're trying to feel like something from home, but nothing on the shelves that you see remind you of home. Because crema is like ketchup down there. They put it on everything. You put it on eggs, you put it in bacon, you put it on everything, right? And so I want people to understand that everybody knows in your own culture, you have that comfort food, right? So I wanted them to understand the connection to that comfort food. So now you understand the problem, okay? Now tell me the solution. Here's the solution. This is what we're doing. We built the crema. Here's what it looks like, so on and so forth. Okay, now I want you to amplify it. Now, amplifying doesn't just mean marketing. When you're in a pitch competition like this, I want you to amplify how you're going to do it. How are you going to scale this? What's your forecasting looking like? How are you going to continue to move forward? And so one of the things she put up, which I thought was the greatest thing ever, she says, listen, this entire market is X billion of dollars or whatever. She's like, if I get 1% of that, I'm $100 million company. And just right there, that like resonated with everyone too, because it's just like, okay, not only did you found a problem, create a solution for that problem, then you amplified the solution for that problem, and now you made it resonate with everybody. You made it resonate and you made it practical. The same thing with healthcare. That one thing I tell our providers in healthcare, if you're going to go out and do a educational lecture and you're going to provide all this healthcare data, right? It's imperative that you actually put a case study in that lecture as well, because it's important that data makes practical sense. Okay, here's all the fancy data. Okay, now here it is actually in real life. Here's how it works. And so, always be storytelling and utilize your own personal life experiences to draw in the audience to make that story resonate with everyone.
I fully agree with what you're saying here. And where she used the 1%, it's like, well, anybody can get 1%. I mean,
exactly, yeah,
1%, like, right? So, and we do the very similar, and like we have our follow-up system, right? The automated, relevant, personalized follow-up system. And I tell a story. The story is true. I went on vacation when my child was, a year old, not even. And my sales manager was going to cover, I was the number 1 rep in this company. So they were going to cover my calls and my emails. And so I went on vacation. She got sick. So every parent can relate to their child getting sick. We ended up at the hospital. She had a fever. We couldn't fly for 2 days. I come back, my voicemail is jammed. My email is jammed. I pick up, start listening to the voicemails. Hey, Doug, where are you? Where are you? What's up? What's up? Hey, Doug, come on over. I want to buy from you. I'm like, oh gosh, right? Call the gentleman. And there were 6 messages on that from that gentleman over that week. And so I call and I say, Jerry, I'm really sorry. Listen, this is what happened. They didn't cover my calls. They were supposed to. My child got sick. He goes, yeah, I can resonate with all of that. And I said, well, I'll be right over. He goes, Doug, you don't understand. I said, I wanted to buy. The CEO gave me a directive. I had to buy today. So I bought from Lightship, your #1 competitor. Well, Gabriel, that cost me 25 grand in commissions, right? So what's the moral of the story? You got to have a follow-up system. If you don't have a follow-up system in place, you're dropping sales, right? Anyone who's selling can relate to this story. Anyone who's a parent can relate to this story, right? And so, by the way, my vacation cost me $4,000. I lost 25,000 going on a $4,000 vacation.
Cost you $30,000 that vacation.
Right. And so why can't we follow up? Because it's hard. You get 200-300 people you got to stay in touch with. So we solved that problem, right? We created an automated, personalized, meaningful, relevant follow-up system that will follow up when you can't. And so now we amplify that problem of that pain. How much are you losing? Can you relate to this story? Right?
Exactly.
What if you only gain back 10% of the 80% of the sales that you're losing? Right? It's a pretty simple equation. And it's not hard. We measured this over the year. Just by the way, just following up, you get between a 5 and 15% lift in your sales. Because you get the ones that never would have happened, and you build more referrals and more relationships and all of that stuff, right? So the reason I'm bringing this up is not just to pitch our own stuff here on my podcast, but I want people to understand that what you're saying we use, and it works.
Yeah.
And if people aren't doing this, they're missing out. So that's why I asked you, could you repeat that formula? Because that formula is so easy to understand. And so now we got a little bit of time left. Why don't we jump into like marketing? How should people look at marketing in their business today? Because the weird part is I've done these surveys over the years, and it always turns out that the average company has 2 methodologies on average on how they're going out and getting business, which to me is like, it's not enough, right? Like, if you have referrals working and all of a sudden, or let's say you're doing live events for whatever, and the pandemic kicks in, boom, that's gone right then and there, right? So your whole business falls. So how should they approach marketing? And, how many methods should they have over, say, a 12-month period?
That's a great question, because the methods also kind of depend on what's your objective, right? And who is your target audience? Because obviously you got to refine your message based on your audience. And for example, if you're going to be reaching out to philanthropists for donations, that message is going to be much different than if you're reaching out for a service, right? You have a specific service versus sales. So it all depends. Now, one thing I always encourage folks to do is the baseline, right? The higher up of your marketing funnel, which is how are you going to get people to your website? Because that's essentially your goal. As whatever company you have, your kind of goal is to get them to your website, because that's essentially where you're going to have the bulk of your information. You're going to have your contact information. You're going to have the buy nows, all those things, right? So the top that line is going to, if you have it, if you're able to do it, create some type of newsletter of value, right? Create a way to capture these individuals' information, because to Doug's point, you're going to need to follow up, and you're not going to be able to follow up if you have no contact information for them, right? So if you have individuals that sign up for that newsletter, okay, now they're at that awareness stage. You got them aware, they're kind of aware of your products and service. Now they're starting to get down into that evaluation. They get down to your website, they're starting to evaluate, okay, what is this individual doing? What is this product or service or whatever the case may be? And what's the value, right? And so the value really does have to be that website, and it has to be very, that's essentially your elevator pitch. because you get a very short amount of time for, if you look at your, Google Analytics, a very short amount of session times, right? So you got to kind of get them pretty really quick. I'll admit the shadesofe.com, if you guys want to check it out, I need to do a better job. I need to do a much better job about kind of getting to the PAL quickly. But one thing you'll notice is the subscription thing is the first thing you'll see. One thing you'll also notice I removed is the social media logos from being on the top right corner. I actually moved them because the last thing I want to do is have my guests come to my show on my website and click on a social media, and now they're actually lost in reels. I lost them from my algorithm, right? And so really, first and foremost, really trying to get like a newsletter or a blog or something to capture folks' attention and for they to actually subscribe to your content, because then you can kind of start pushing out new items. Now, Doug, one of the things you also mentioned was, all these different services and different products, and it's true, and especially with storytelling, needs to be relevant. You'll notice like during the holiday seasons, there's always these unique collaborations, right? Nike and the Grinch, or Tiger Woods and all these Winnie the Pooh. Well, there's a kind of methodology behind that. One, it also gets you to purchase new stuff, right? Because now you have a new line, a new collaboration, a new collection that you just have to have, even though it looks just like the product that was purchased 3 years ago, right? Different colorway, maybe same silhouette. So they're really trying to get you that, but they're also trying to maintain relevancy. Right now, as a brand, like there's nothing greater than essentially having a loyal consumer, somebody that purchased one of your items, they go on social media, they talk about it. But individuals, like larger organizations as well, that's kind of where swag for my brand kind of comes into play, because you can actually go and purchase some items, have them at a conference, put a QR code on there. And so you can actually have people walking around with one of your bags, like I have my sweater on, right? The Shades of Entrepreneurship sweater that can you purchase online right now. Got this walking around. I'm now a walking billboard for my company, right? Swag items, it's true. If you actually go look up the data, they get about 3,000 impressions per item, while a social media ad gets about 100. So a paid ad, social media gets a good about 100 to 150 good impressions, right? People that actually click on it and go to your website. And that's paid. Versus a swag item that you buy hundreds of and you have somebody walking around, that thing's going to be seen about 3,000 times, and it costs a fraction. So it's also kind of depends on what you want to do, right? Because you can go that route with the swag if you want to get real branded, but then again, that's everybody. Versus if you want to be very narrowed and you're looking at just philanthropists, right? Then it makes sense to kind of get that newsletter, understand who these individuals are, really cater your message to them, but follow up. As Doug said, I could not preach that anymore because if you're not following up, out of sight, out of mind, like Doug happened, hey, as soon as he didn't answer, I'm going to Lighthouse. I'm going to the competitor. Yeah. So it's imperative to have that. And then the processes in place, like Doug mentioned, having these processes in place of if things happen where you are unfortunately unavailable, okay, it triggers this, boom, automations that come to Doug's, so the CEL sales strategy team, they got those automations going. They have their AI team, boom, boom, boom. Communications are still going. So it still feels like your team's working, even when you don't have to work. And, like The Lazy CEO, great book, right? Work smarter, not harder kind of thing. So again, try to get them onto your website, make sure it's a value, and then you really cater your message to your audience. And you'll be able to understand like what really resonates with them by checking out your Google Analytics, because you're going to see which blog posts or which newsletters had the highest click rate. And then you can kind of go back and see, well, what was it that they're clicking on? And you can kind of start to gauge what that value is. But I'll certainly start out with that newsletter, because you really want to capture them and get them to your website and begin to, funnel them out from there, essentially.
And so in that newsletter, follow your formula. What's the problem? What's the solution? How do you amplify it, right? This is just a repeat. And if you're looking at those newsletters, like you're talking about, and that's what I find, Gabriel, too many people don't look at the data. They don't look at what is there. And so they're on to the next thing, and they're on to the next thing, and they're on to the next thing. And so if we rated like our first attempt, let's say it's a C plus out of a, score that we would get in school. Well, how do we make it a B? How do we make it an A plus or an A minus or something, right? And then you move on to the next one. But too many people I find just like jump from one thing to another. Oh, I tried this, it doesn't work. Well, yeah, of course, not everything will work. the
Yeah.
first
You know,
time.
my old boss once told me, she said, if you're not getting comparatively better, you're getting competitively worse. And that
Ooh,
has resonated with me and stuck with me ever since she's ever said that. So again, if you are not getting comparatively better, you are getting competitively worse.
that's well said. Time to send her a Christmas gift or whatever she so, so Gabriel, how do people, well, I mean, we mentioned your podcast, right? The Shades of the Entrepreneurship podcast. How do people get to know more about you, the podcast, or swag, whatever,
Yeah. Yeah. By all means, if you want, if you're interested, by all means, subscribe to the newsletter, theshadesofyou.com. But I would love to connect with you folks. I love connecting with people. Connect with me on LinkedIn, Mr. Gabriel Flores. I love to hear kind of what people are doing. Don't follow me. Connect with me. Click the down chevron and click the connect button on LinkedIn, because I would love to also, if you follow me, then I've not seen any of your updates. So connect with me so I can see what you're doing as well. I love to strategize, love to collaborate. If you're looking for a business accelerator, business coach, please reach out to me. I'm always happy to connect you with some mentors or some programs, especially if you're within the Pacific Northwest. I'll actually be out in the Midwest here the next couple of months, but by all means, I'm kind of all over the state. Hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm always happy to collaborate and connect with other people.
Awesome. Gabriel, thanks so much for being here today. I appreciate you being here.
Doug, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Okay. So, what did you learn? Did you learn that there's a problem solution? Then you got to amplify that solution to that particular problem and then get it to resonate with your audience. That's the formula. You do that and you can take that problem, and remember, it has to be a problem they're having too, or it has to be an opportunity they want to gain, or it has to be a goal that they want to get, right? And so then you're going to take that, you're going to create the solution. What's the solution? Your offering, right? And then you're going to amplify that solution so it resonates with them. You're going to amplify the solution to the problem to show them the way out. In the process, you're probably going to create a little bit of pain, and that's okay. That gets them to move, or they're going to get some excitement. They're going to start to emotionally move, and they're going to start to move toward you as long as it is relevant to them and meaningful to them. And the more you can demonstrate that value to them, the higher that their buying confidence goes up for you, and the lower their fear goes. And that's the formula that you want to create through the process. All right. So remember, MPSF, right? Marketing, prospecting, selling, follow up. Marketing, prospecting, selling, follow up. And you just want to keep following up over and over and over again. It builds relationships. It builds trust. It's a common courtesy. People expect it. And quite frankly, it's crazy how many people don't follow up. In fact, I'm going to do a whole solo episode on this particular aspect of follow-up, and people are dropping the ball. You will easily get a 5 to 15% lift in your sales if you're consistently following up. So, and by the way, what does it cost you to follow up? Little to nothing, right? So it's expected. You expect it when you're involved in some type of buying scenario. They expect it too. So speaking of that, if you are one of the people who are interested in being one of the first to try our SaaS offering on personalized, meaningful, and relevant follow-up, send me an email at doug@ceosalesstrategies.com and just put in there, I want follow-up, right? Or if you're interested in predictably, reliably, and measurably growing your revenue to wherever you want it to go, and you want a math-based formula in doing this, we are rolling out our accelerator to do so. Let me know that as well. In the meantime, go out and sell something. Be marketing, prospecting, selling, and following up. I'm going to say that again. Be marketing, prospecting, selling, and following up. Use the formula that Gabriel revealed that I just gave you. And please, 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 please make somebody's day happy by, how do you do that? Helping them solve the problem, gain the opportunity they're looking for, or achieve their goal. And you do this in a win-win-win fashion. You win, they win, someone else wins. It's the greatest thing that you can do in regards to selling. And you make somebody happy, you're happy, you get paid. It is the ultimate and sales happiness, if you will. All right. Don't discount when you don't have to. Remember, provide your value, push the value up, the value proposition, and make it resonate. People pay for value. They're looking for that. If you don't believe that, go on an international flight to, I don't know, London or anywhere, that's more than a 6-hour flight. And you will see that first class is generally always full. And they're paying sometimes 10 times more for the ticket that you would pay for even in, economy plus. So people value, they pay for value. Until next time, this is Doug C. Brown with the CEO Sales Strategies Podcast. To your success.